My name is Sean, welcome back to the channel. This video we're going to tackle something that happens semi-frequently. Once you fix it, it's easy to maintain, it's just sometimes you gotta go back and fix it. We've got mold in the headlight. And this happens on MP412Cs semi-frequently. And the issue is you get moisture in here and then it tends to grow that in there. Sometimes it's just looks like it's raining in there as well. The ultimate way to keep this from happening is silica gel packets right below the bulb itself on the inside. But if you let it get this far, you've got to take it out, take this apart and clean it. And that's what we're going to cover in this one. That one has got a little bit. This one also has just a little bit. It's not real bad. But we're going to get these cleaned up. It's really not that bad to do. Step one, take the wheel off. We've already done it on that side. About to do it on this side. These are a 17 millimeter stud. So take those wheels off, and then after that, we're gonna take the inner fender well out. These are going to be a 4 millimeter on the ones you gotta take out over here. And you will have to get these loose. These are plastic Phillips head. And these tend to be a pain in the ass. 10 millimeter on all of these on the inside. So I have to get all of those bolts out. We've got TPMS sensors up here. And we'll show you that as well. Okay, so you can see it better on this side. And an alternative way to taking this entire thing out, you do have all the room if you take it out, but if you kind of want to slack off a little bit, you can take just the front leading edge here loose, peel it back and hold it there. It's still a little bit in the way, but it is an option if you want to do that. Also make sure of all the plastic ones that you're pulling out here. There's some different ones, different length. One of them is extra long, I believe it's down here that goes all the way through. And the other thing is you can take this off if you need to, or if it comes off or is not on there correctly. There's a little hook on top here. You can see where it actually goes over the top and then sits right down there. So if that's loose, you can correct that by just sliding that on top. So we've got the light plug right here that you want to just push the button and pull it out. So that's unplugged. Then up here we've got 3 Phillips head screws. You'll need a stubby to get in there. You just back those out, make sure the clips up here stay where they're supposed to stay. That'll get the top edge of that loose. So we can free up this whole side at this point. You'll have that the same on both sides. And then we've got to get to these bottom bolts. All of these bolts are exposed. I have noticed that a lot of times you don't know what head you're gonna get on it. They get replaced periodically with random things. But it's very clear all of them are exposed. Any of the ones you see you can get out. This bottom piece you only have to take loose. You don't have to completely remove it. If you want to, you can. There are screws across the front there. Like I said, they're all easily seen. So if you want to remove this whole thing, you can. If not, just take it loose, except for these front edge. These ones you have to completely remove because they go directly onto the bumper. All right, so now you've got everything loose from up here and up here and down there. And there's a ambient air temperature sensor that's right about here. And if you don't disconnect that, you're gonna break it. And it's over $200 for that little sensor. And if you break it, it's not just the ambient air temperature on the inside that won't read. What's gonna happen is your radiator fans are going to spin full force all the time. And then when you shut off the car, they're still gonna run for about 10 or 15 minutes. So that's how you'll know if you actually broke it. But the way that you don't break it, you can reach in here just a little bit and there's a connector to unplug. There's actually 2. One is also an antenna, I think it is. But disconnect those. But the correct way, so to speak, to get those loose is you have to take the frunk out. And to do that, we've got this rubber piece right here that appears to have been taken off before. Yay. And we've got these M4 bolts. So you gotta take those out, and that will take this whole front section loose. We've got to take our gasket out. There's normally a little seal right here that was already taken out, but that just pops right off. You got this guy that also was pretty loose and isn't necessarily loose. So we got Velcro all the way around there. This does not, because we've already removed it to disconnect the battery. You have screws that are pins that go in all of these, and then there's M4s right here and here as well, as you may have seen in other videos. So you can take that guy out, and then you have access to all of these fun things. This is the cabin air filter. I did a video on that. Go check that one out. You see the batteries are disconnected for what else we're doing. And you've got this front section. Don't forget the Phillips head screws that are down here as well. Those will be before you take that other section out. So we'll take this guy out, or at least move it out of the way anyway. You don't have to disconnect these if you don't want to. So once you're down in here, here is the sensor I speak of. And then you've got a lead of cable, and the plug is right back here. So you can unplug that. Pop that guy off. And now we're loose, so we won't break that off. Okay, so now you saw this pull it off, and one person can do this. I've done it myself, but you do have to be mindful of this plug that is on the passenger side, assuming your car is left-hand drive. So that's pretty obvious where that goes in there. And then you have the wiper sprayers that you probably didn't know this car had. That's what these are right here. Pop out there. So that hose, you've got to pull that off. Here you can see what we pulled loose earlier, and that's the one you don't want to break. So we're good there. That's all the connections to this bumper. After you pop it off, you're good to go. This is one headlight out, and this way you can kind of see where everything connects. So we've got a 10mm back here that you access through this side. We've got a 10mm on here, also on the back, that you access from this side. And then this bracket, it looks like you can take the bolt out from the bottom here, where it goes in, but you can't really get to it so easily. So it's easy if you just take this off, take these two bolts out, and the whole thing comes off with the headlight, and then you can pop it loose if you need to. And so here's our assembled side. Step one is gonna be taking this trim piece off. There's just two clips that hold it in, so you grab it on either end, pull up, and try not to break it in half when you do it. It should come up pretty easily. Just like so. And there's your clips. There's actually 4 of them, not 2, which if you notice is twice as many as I said. And from here, side note, if you want to adjust the height of your headlights, that's what that adjustment right there is. So you can just pop that panel off, turn that guy, and it'll make your height not suck. So from here, now you can kind of see what we're talking about with the 10mm. You can get to it, but it's a little bit easier if you just take these two out. Here's the one on the back. Then the one you take off right there. And don't forget this connector that should be pretty apparent when it stays attached to the car and you take all the bolts loose. There is a connection on the back side that you push the button and just pull it right out. And the headlight just pulls straight out, and you can see exactly how funky it really is. So one point on here, this one does not have it But on 2012s, I know it has it. There'd be a flat metal plate right here that has a spade connector on it, and that's for the FM antenna. This is a 2013 Spider, and it does not have that. But if you have a 2012, I know it's going to have that. There were no Spiders in 2012. What I'm not sure of is that a Spider thing, or is that a 13-14 thing? If you have antennas in your glass, like up here, if you look real close there, you can see the antennas. If you have these antennas, you're not gonna have that plug in the bumper. If you do not have this, you will have that plug in the bumper. So now with these removed, before we go to put them in the oven, we wanna make sure we don't have any of the rubber pieces still on here. So there's the rubber seal that goes right there. That one, you just pry that off. This one was a little bit janky right there, but you can either take this rubber pin off so it doesn't expand, fall out, melt, whatever, or you can just take the whole stud out, as has happened on this one. There's the rubber piece. This is the bulb. You do not have to take the bulb out. It actually does get extremely hot while it's in use. And the module, we're told, is also fine. People have done it with the module in and not had a problem. We're only doing this at 200 degrees from the oven that you probably can't read from here. So we're at baking at 200, which is what some of you potheads might do as well. And we're gonna leave it in there for about 10 or 15 minutes. Should be sufficient to break loose the seal. As you can kind of see on this one, the seal that goes all the way around there. That's what we're loosening up. It's a butyl rubber. We just need to get it hot to where you can pry this lens off. And there's also clips as well, but we'll show that when we pull it out.
Here we go. Call me Sarah Lee.
Okay, Sarah Lee, get it out of there.
Sarah Lee.
Now, mind you that this is a marble countertop and it is very hot. If you don't have a marble countertop, you may want to put something under this, particularly if you have laminate of some variety. It may not be good being this hot sitting on it. And you want to make sure that as you pry this up that it won't make contact back on here, because after this cools off, it will seal this back. So make sure it stays off of this seal. However you got to do that, stick a screwdriver in there or whatever as you're working your way around.
It's still hot, but it's not so hot that I can't touch it.
It's like a warm brown.
It's like warm apple pie.
All right. Again, you don't want to let any of the black things lay on here because then you got extra cleanup.
And it's very difficult to clean up.
There we go. Ta-da.
So on the lens itself, where you get some mold, mildew, that kind of thing, here you can kind of see in the light where it looks kind of funky. That is on the inside, not the outside. The outside's already been cleaned. So that's what we're going to be polishing up using cleaning. And you want to make sure you're not using anything that is either too abrasive, but also not anything that will eat the plastic, like acetone can eat through the plastic, discolor it, that kind of thing.
My preference is McGuire's Classic X for polishing these. Is what I've used traditionally, but we don't have any today. And we're gonna go with some clean cut turtle rubbing compound. Just need something that's good for your clear coat safe for the exterior of your car, but is not gonna be too abrasive.
And there's between a rubbing compound and a polishing compound. The polishing compound is going to be less abrasive. Anything that's meant for plastic is also going to be that very low abrasion.
Also, recommendation, it's always good to test in a safe area. For example, here, this is not seen outside the car. If you test whatever you're using, you could do that. And I have used the power drill attachments before instead of doing it by hand, but I've learned doing this a dozen times that you actually have a lot less work if you just go ahead and do it by hand. a lot less likely to put some additional scratches inside that you have to work out afterwards. Work small sections. Check your progress. As I hold up to the light, I can already see that I've removed some stuff. I want to polish the outside a little bit too to make sure it's not looking at something from the outside on the inside. Depending on how bad this is one of the best sets I've seen. The customer wanted them to be as optically clear as possible. I've seen some that were much worse than this set. So your time cleaning inside the light could be as little as 10-15 minutes per light. You might spend an hour. Your results may vary. But be patient. Rotate your cloth frequently so you don't have anything scratching, and you'll be happy with the results.
So right in here, not always do you get this, but on some you do, where you have this kind of mildew look right here on the inside and up here. And you've got to be very, very careful about that, because if you have any type of abrasion on it, it will leave a mark exactly how you did it. So it's not a perfect reflection right now. And if you didn't know, this is the section that lights up with your running lights. But there's kind of a texture to it. And if you change that texture, it's very, very apparent. So you've got to be very, very light about how you're cleaning that up. And this is the whole inside of it, which you can also tell is getting some mold in there, some mildew. It's got a case of the funk. You can see that pretty well right there. This you won't really notice because it's under the opaque part of the lens, but if you want to clean it up, you can clean it up. But that's what we're working with. So you just got to be very careful about how you're getting this other stuff cleaned up.
This is a very, very light touch, not putting much pressure at all, because we're gonna lose the frosted effect. But you can see let's do it again. I'm just barely touching it. Is that showing up?
Yeah.
Get a clean part of the cloth. You do not want to rub this very hard. You can see it took most of it out.
Right there in the corner.
With just that barely touching it. Can't stress that enough.
All right, so everything is cleaned up here. As you can tell, this looks a whole lot better. So we're good there. Now we've got to seal this back. And the way you want to seal it back is we're going to take our lens, drop it right on, and it's going to be a little bit tacky, but not too much. And the way that we're going to get this all sealed back and all back in place is we're going to put it back in the oven just like that. So today on Cooking with Kevin, we're going to remove the headlight that we put back in there to get it softened up so we can get it back together.
Do recommend getting permission from your other half before you do this so they don't freak out. But it does not harm the stove.
So this has been back in here for 10 minutes at 200 degrees.
We're gonna push them together. We're gonna...
And the idea is to get your clips
Bring
back
the clips
clipped.
back. There we go. You can use pliers for this, by the way, to kind of squeeze it together. If you're not as strong as I am.
And something you do want to try to make sure of is that
was a
beetle
joke.
rubber. You want to make sure that you don't see any gaps. So if you see any air pockets or anything like that, it's not going to be properly sealed.
Just take
Which
some,
it should just go straight back on the same way it came off. All right, so headlight installation. It's very much like it came out. Just make sure you get your studs lined up in the back there. There's one to line it up and one for the actual studs, so there are two. Make sure you get those in the right spot. And same thing kind of goes back here on this side. One to line it up, one to actually secure it. Point here on the rubber is supposed to line up in this indentation in the rubber. If it's not in there, it's not right. Then you also have this bracket on the bottom that you may or may not have taken off. Get that guy back in there. These are also all of the adjustments, all of these points. So if you notice that your body here is not flat, like maybe it pokes up or down or doesn't sit right, you can take that time there to adjust those out. There's another nut that actually spaces it out. So you can readjust that as needed to get your fitment correct. Maybe it's bent out or repaired, whatever. But that's when you should take time to do that. And also, it wouldn't be a bad idea to re-aim them if you need to. Like I said, from the inside edge here, you can adjust the height while you've got this apart if needed. But remember, you do have to have it on level ground, aimed at, you know, a flat spot with marked, so you can see what's going on in the dark. Don't just go willy-nilly hitting adjustments. So these clips that are on the bumper right here, two on each side, you want to make sure that the clips actually are there. Sometimes they can stay in the headlight side of that. I want to make sure that doesn't happen. So you want to pop those off, make sure they're on there first, and the coordinated side over here is right here on the headlights on both sides. So what you're going to do, you can do this one person. I've done it with one person. It kind of helps if you have two people. But I'm going to show you how we're doing it, but I'm going to explain a little bit before. If you get one side kind of in there clipped in first, make sure it's clipped in. When you get to this side, it might not go straight in. You may notice, or may not even notice that did it, is goes right here below that. If you do that, it's going to get a big gap right here. It's going to push it down, push this top side out. You get a big gap right in here. It won't fit right. So if you put it on, that's what you've got. That's how you fix that. Your clip is not in here. When you get one side in, come over to the other side. It helps if you kind of rotate it to kind of push it this way a little bit. So you're putting pressure on this side to get the clip in. Whole thing will pop right in. Okay, so you may have noticed that we fought with this a little bit to get adjusted, and one reason for that was we think these headlights were not really adjusted properly to begin with. The date code on the headlights is actually newer than the car. So these headlights have been replaced before. Why? We don't know. It's possible maybe they had the mold and that was their solution, was replace the headlight. But this has been taken off before, as we discovered. Headlights have apparently been replaced before, and we don't think they were adjusted correctly. So we had to do some height adjustments over here to make everything correct, and it's not quite secured back yet. We got to put these screws in. But we went through and made the proper adjustments so they're in here correctly this time. So that's correct. Went ahead and put the bolts back here in the front. This has got butyl rubber. It's normally glued down with double-sided tape, but they had butyl rubber that was in here. It seems to do an okay job. Fun thing that you may not have known, this little line right here lines up with your latch. So when you've got it popped up, if you're looking for this latch, feel for this little rubber spot where it pokes up. It's kind of like braille for your bonnet. So you can find that. There's your latch. We're going to finish getting all the screws back in the bottom, and then over here on the sides, get all those in there. Go back, put these in down in the bottom, and that is going to wrap this job up. To prevent this from happening in the future, back where the bulbs are, you can put silica gel packets, and that's the McLaren's fix for that. So just get some silica gel packets, take that rubber ring off where the bulb goes, stuff some down in there. They tend to double-sided tape them in there. I don't know if they necessarily need to, but they do that, and that's how you can prevent moisture buildup in these in the future. They recommend doing that every year. You, of course, don't need to. They also recommend you replace the windshield wiper every year. But it may not be bad every 2-3 years, maybe 4, don't know how long they last, but that's something that you can easily do to prevent this from happening in the first place if you haven't had this problem yet. Make sure you plug in that ambient air sensor like I mentioned. If you don't do it, you'll know the first time you start it up. Or actually, just turn the ignition on, it'll go nuts. So that is how you solve fogging or mildew in your headlights. And they should look nice and new and good and wonderful. And if you found this video helpful, informative, entertaining, whatever, make sure you give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and share the video places for people who have mildewy headlights and foggy headlights, or you think might need that in the future. Who knows? Share it anyway. I don't care. See you in the next one.